Everybody has a story behind why they sell. What's yours? Well, today we're going to find out. My name is Jamar Brown, and I'm a keynote speaker, author, and business coach. I want to welcome you to today's program. And as part of the Sales Success Series, which is a three-part program, which is all about how can we, as salespeople, go from where we are today to reaching our true potential as a sales professional and enjoy the process while doing so. Well, today's program is based on my book, What's Your Sales Story? And before we get started, I want you to watch a really short video really covering what your sales story is all about.
Success in life, just as it is in sales, is not about a specific number of habits or tips. It's about stories. Stories are formed by experiences, and within the pages of the highly acclaimed book, What's Your Sales Story?, award-winning 20-year corporate executive and author Jamar Brown will better help you understand your experiences so you can identify and confront the stories of your past in order to rewrite your story and define your future. But it won't be just any future. It'll be the one you always dreamed of living. Everyone has a story behind why they sell. Discover yours today when you order a copy of What's Your Sales Story at Amazon.com. To book Jamar Brown for an eye-opening and engaging interview on reality-based selling, or to have him inspire your audience at your next event, go to JamarBrown.com.
All right, welcome back to the program. And once again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day and your busy schedule to be a part of such a different part or different type of program, which is all based on your own story as it relates to your sales success. So let's talk about the purpose of the Sales Success Series as a whole. Then we'll dive into what today's program is all about. First of all, really the program is designed to help you maximize your potential as a sales professional. And years ago, throughout my experience in business and managing sales teams and being a VP of sales and being a salesperson myself, I realized that the best way to be successful at something is to maximize your own potential. And oftentimes, sales programs are based on teaching everyone the exact same thing and sharing the exact same information with everyone, but they fail to take into account the individuals that are actually tasked with doing the technical aspects of the sales process. So how can we maximize your own potential? The second thing is we want to uncover and eliminate what is getting in the way of your success. Now, to me, that's an exciting concept because so often when we are struggling at sales, when we go through these sales programs, we're given so much information. And I literally have maybe 15 different binders that thick from sales training programs that I've gone through. But we all know what happens. You go to those programs and you may take away one or two nuggets that you apply, and then those big binders either go into the trash or they sit on your shelves for all eternity. Well, the bottom line is I realized that it's not a matter of how much you do as a salesperson to help you be successful. It's doing the right behaviors and thinking the right thoughts. And before we pile on more information, what if we were to strip away those behaviors that are not conducive to our success? What if we were to get rid of those mindsets that are really getting in the way of our success, whether it be negativity or drama, or thinking that the sales process is too difficult, or thinking that we don't have the right products or our pricing isn't right? What if we eliminate all those thoughts? Then what we're left with are the behaviors and the mindsets that actually work. And so hopefully throughout today's program, we're going to begin to uncover that process and understand from your own perspective what is helping and hurting your sales career. And then if you tune into the other two programs as part of the Sales Success Series, you have a complete package, so to speak, in terms of helping you to go from where you are today to being a perennially successful sales professional. So let's talk about the other two programs as part of the Sales Success Series. Well, today is What's Your Sales Story, based on my book by the same name. Next week, we have Selling in Color. And this is a really exciting program because it's all about how do you unlock the code of your customers. And the program is based on colorizing personality types, which makes it very easy to understand and implement. And it looks at our customers and how they think, how they behave, how they operate, what their tendencies are, what their personalities are. And it gives us a really good definition of an explanation of how our customers think and operate. But the program goes beyond that because oftentimes programs focus on the customer perspective. But once again, this is called What's Your Sales Story? So as part of your story, it's how do you think? How do you operate? What is your personality type? What is your style? What are the blind spots in your approach to sales that may be getting in the way of your success? And so next week's program is going to go through not only our customers' personality types and profiles, but our own in order to help us connect with our customers in a more significant way to increase our sales results. Then after that, we have a program called the Kaizen Way of Sales Excellence, and this is a very unique program which I'm really excited to share with all of you because it really looks at the fact that a lot has changed in sales, but one thing has remained the same. Okay, so what has changed? Number one, our customers are having much more of a difficult time running a successful business. Their time is limited. Our companies are being sort of hit with competition left and right. Our resources aren't as great as they used to be. But there's one thing in sales that hasn't changed and will never change, and that is the importance of making an impact when you are in front of your customer in that 3 feet of space. So how do you make impact? How do you connect with customers despite all of the white noise that's going on these days? We're going to talk about that. The second thing, which I'm sure you're very interested to learn more about, which is how do we achieve more with less? The bottom line is we have less resources. If you're a newly hired sales professional today, you have less time, or you're given less time to be successful than back in the old days of sales. You're told to be successful within the first couple of months, whereas before it was, just learn the job and give yourselves a few months. Totally different now. We have less resources to work with. And if you're, for example, from the pharmaceutical industry like I was years ago in medical devices, we know that our resources are limited. What we can do is much more limited today than it was back in the days. So the question is, how can we achieve more in this environment of less? I'm going to explain exactly how we can do that. And finally, we're going to go through a proven sales process. Now, the typical sales approach is what? Introduction, identifying customer needs, benefit selling, agreement, trial close, and then close. Well, I'm going to kind of put that off to the side and present to you a completely different sales approach based on stories that I guarantee will help you catapult your sales results. So please make sure you tune in for the Kaizen Way of Sales Excellence program. And this is how you can sign up for those programs. You can log into studiocastpros.com and click on upcoming events. You'll see all of my future upcoming webcasts, our studio casts. And then secondly, you can call 949-371-9077. So this is what you'll receive when you sign up. Hours and hours of personalized sales training and coaching, which we all can benefit from. A free copy of my book, What's Your Sales Story? And then a free 20-minute coaching session to talk to me about anything that is going on in your sales world to help you very quickly go from what you're struggling with to being successful. And finally, I want you to share your thoughts and ideas. Follow me at Jamar_Brown via Twitter, Facebook, email info@thekaizenway.com, LinkedIn, and one thing you can call 949-371-9077. So what is our focus for today? We're going to discuss the significance of your story as it relates to your sales success. Have you ever thought about your story? Who are you as a sales professional? How did you get into sales? What are your current thoughts and perspectives around the sales process? Do you know your customer story? Do you know what they're all about? Let's talk about the importance of that today. The second thing is we're going to review some key lessons from my book, What's Your Sales Story? And in the book, I'm going to tell you the whole story in a second, but it talks about how I went from nearly getting fired for poor sales performance to ultimately becoming salesperson of the year. And what made the difference? What changed in the sales process? And more importantly, what can you as a salesperson learn from my story that you can relate to help you change the direction of your story from where you're going now to being a very successful salesperson year after year. We're also going to interview someone that has actually read and applied What's Your Sales Story. For anyone that has ever worked with me, whether it be one-on-one coaching, whether it be a keynote talk at a seminar or a business session with the sales team, everyone knows that I believe in something called reality-based selling or reality-based discussions. And that is, I don't believe in just discussing theory, because theories without application and without proof of them working really are just theory. So if you're going to present something, it should be able to be challenged. And that's why I'm really excited to share my program with all of you, because I have a book that shows I went from last in sales to number one, and the video of my acceptance speech for Salesperson of the Year. I talk about how I took a sales team from last to first, and I have a video showing my acceptance speech for Sales Manager of the Year. I've interviewed clients that I've worked with on camera, unsolicited, asking them, what did we work on? How did your sales team benefit from what we worked on and what I did for your organization? And they talk about the results that were generated. And so I have someone that's going to come on the program later on who, quite honestly, he received a copy of my book. It sat on the shelves for a long time. This person finally read it, and you're going to hear directly from him how impactful it was in terms of the shift in his business and his sales process. So why is this program different from other programs? Well, number one, everyone is different, but we're all taught the same. And the question is, why is that? Why is everyone taught the exact same thing when we're all different? As I mentioned before, we go to these sales training programs and we sit through a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, and we take away 1 or 2 nuggets based on what really hits home with us. Well, then why don't we look at that differently? Instead of having a sort of process where everyone is taught the same thing, how can we learn how to teach everyone differently based on their own story, based on their own sales reality? The second thing is, there are no 10 habits. When I had the idea of writing my book, What's Your Sales Story, I initially was going to write the 10 habits of how to be successful in pharmaceutical sales. But then I realized there really are no 10 habits because everyone is different. What is helping and hurting your sales career is different. And so yes, there might be some really good habits out there, but the most important thing is, are you applying what's most important to you? And hopefully by me telling my story, you'll understand what you can relate to help you change the course of your own sales story. We also know that selling is more emotional than technical. Selling is more emotional than technical. We operate based on how we feel about the salesperson, about what the product's going to do for us, about the organization we're working with, about our experience with the people that are involved in the sales process. So if we make decisions based on emotion and then justify on logic, then why do we have it flipped? Why do we talk about the logical side of the sales process first and never really talk about the emotional side? Let's talk about the emotional side first. How do we connect with people on an emotional level? And I'm going to talk to you about how we exactly do that. Also, everyone has a story. You have a story, I have a story, and people communicate through stories. And you look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, you looked at people that share their stories on LinkedIn. Everyone is telling a story about their life, about their family, about their business, about their thoughts about success or thoughts about failure. So everyone communicates in stories. Our world was based on sharing ideas through stories before we could even write. So if that is what our world is based on, and that's how people communicate, then why do we as salespeople communicate through monologues and broken up facts and through this technical side of selling? Why don't we talk about stories? Why don't we communicate in a story type of way? And so we're going to talk about why it's important to understand that everyone has a story, and it's important to communicate with our customers as well as understanding our own stories, okay? And then the bottom line is, I believe that if you can understand your story as well as your customer story, you will have unlocked the key to your success. Once again, if you can understand your story as well as your customer story, you will have unlocked the key to your success. And throughout today's program, we're going to understand that. So now let's get into the actual story. And what I want you to really think about as I share my story, and obviously the book that I wrote goes into a lot more detail around my story. I just pulled out some key points I wanted to share with all of you. The reason why I wrote the book, What's Your Sales Story, is mainly because I wanted people to understand the power of stories. And I realized that my success was not based on sales techniques, it was based on stories. And I really wanted to help other salespeople out there that are dealing with what I dealt with, that are struggling with what I struggled with, that are going through what I went through. And I said, I have figured out a way to get through that, to go from failure to success, to go from struggling to being on stage winning the award for Salesperson of the Year. And so the book that I wrote tells my story, but at the end of each chapter, it has a section for the reader to tell his or her own story, to share his or her own experiences. And that's why it's called not Jamar's story, it's called What's Your Sales Story. So let's talk about where it all came about. Several years ago, I was asked to give a talk to a group of high school seniors. They were getting ready to transition from being a senior in high school, a senior in college, into working in the workforce through a program called Inroads, which is an internship program. And they said, Jamar, you're someone that has been successful. You went through the same program, you graduated, you got this great job at this medical pharmaceutical company, you won Salesperson of the Year, you were a corporate sales trainer, you were in marketing, you were Sales Manager of the Year, you've done all these things. I want you to tell these high school or college seniors the 10 steps to success. What are the 10 steps to success? What are the 10 habits? And so that night I got in my office and I started writing the steps. But then something hit me, and it hit me really significantly. And it was an emotional thing. And all of a sudden, all of these feelings started to pop in my mind. I started to feel frustration. I started to feel fear. I felt winning. I felt doubt. I felt success. I felt pain. I felt happiness. I felt gain. I felt like I was losing. I felt loneliness. I felt joy. And I also felt loss. And I realized that my success was not about these 10 habits. It was not about me just being this special sales professional and corporate executive. It all came from the time that I was at the bottom of the rankings, about to get fired, and I made some changes. And the changes were around changing my story and around understanding the customer story in a different way. So I told this group of college seniors this story, and there were people in the audience that were crying about the story, that were laughing, that were going through the emotions of my story. And afterwards they came up to me and said, Jamar, thank you so much for sharing your story, because you're the first one who kept it real, who talked about what you really went through and didn't just come up here and give us lip service about how great you are and how everybody can be great. You talked about your failures and your struggles. You talked about what happens behind the scenes when you present a good front to everyone out there, but you go home and you realize you're not who you thought you'd be. You're not achieving the success you thought you'd achieve. And they appreciated that so much. And that hit me so much. I said, if these individuals are being that much affected by my story, then how many other salespeople out there are dealing with the exact same thing that can also benefit from my story? And that really gave me the inspiration to turn that talk into my book, What's Your Sales Story? So with that said, what I'd like you to do, as I share my story and I share what happened and what transpired, I want you to think about your own story. I want you to really reflect on your own sales situation. As I talk about the different situations, really think about how can you relate to what I went through. And at various times as I tell this story, I'm going to ask you to pause, and if you can, write things down. If not, just think about it, to begin to formulate your own story, to understand what is helping your sales career, what is hurting your sales career. So let me start with this. Back in 1995, I was a senior in college. And as I mentioned before, I went through this internship program, and I was hired by I was an intern at Allergan Pharmaceuticals for 2 summers. At the end of my second summer, this is before I began my senior year, I got a full-time offer to work for Allergan Pharmaceuticals as a pharmaceutical sales rep. Now, think about it. I'm 21 years old, just out of college, this great job, great career, all the perks of being a tremendous salesperson. Also at college, I had been student body president. I played basketball and I was on the dean's list. And so you can imagine that my ego was pretty healthy and I thought pretty highly of myself. So at the time, when I entered into my first sales position, this was my attitude towards sales. And I want to share this with you because I want you to think about, what was your initial attitude about sales when you first started? And what is your attitude now about sales? Let's see if you can relate. Number one, I thought sales was all about making money and getting promoted. That's really all I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a salesperson for a long period of time. I wanted to get in there, make a ton of money, and get promoted as quickly as possible. Also, I thought that customers were a means to an end. They were stepping stones. They were in the way of me getting to what I wanted to get to, and that's how I treated customers. They were a means to an end. In addition, I did believe that working hard was part of being successful. I did believe that. I wasn't afraid to get up early and come home late. I also believe that entertaining was also the key to success. So working hard and entertaining. Okay, so I wasn't lazy. I was definitely willing to work hard. I thought sales was also all about competing. I competed against everyone. I competed against my fellow co-workers at the company. I thought that, I had to beat them. I thought that I had to beat the competition in my territory. I didn't like the competition. I would talk bad about them. I thought that I was competing against my customers because I felt that it was me against them. They were in my way. They needed to fall in line to help me to be successful. I wanted to get them to use all my products and forget about the competition. So it was a very competitive perspective that I had. Also, I thought that my products were the absolute best in the world. How many of you think your products are the best? We're taught that our products are the best. We're taught that we have distinct advantages over the competition. And so I thought that my products were the best, and no one could tell me anything different. And I wasn't afraid to go toe-to-toe with my customers to tell them that. And I'll share some stories about that in a second. I also thought that you have to have a big ego to be successful. I thought that you have to have this bravado, this walking with your chest out and your chin up, and sort of going there like you own the office or you own the business and you own your customers. And you had to have this thick alligator skin, which is what we were all taught to have. So I thought having a big ego was really a key to success. And the last thing that I thought that it was all about closing. Close, close, close. And there was a statement that used to be said in our business, which was eat what you kill, right? And so we had to kill the customers. We had to eat them. We had to own them. We had to own the office, own the products, get the lion's share of the business. And no matter what happened in the sales process, you had to close. So that is how I went into my initial role as a sales professional. So now let's talk about, with this mindset and this attitude, what transpired as part of my story. So I go out, and this is May of 1995, and I am placed into the Los Angeles territory, which is a territory that's struggling towards the bottom of the rankings. I think it was ranked like 97 out of 98 in the country, so it was at the bottom. It had never done well, and I was told that it would be a developmental assignment for 18 months, go in there, learn the business, and then you move on to something else. So the first meeting with my new boss, I'm just out of college, he tells me these things. It's a developmental assignment. It's a situation where you get in and learn the business and move on. And I told him I will be the #1 salesperson in this territory. And he said, no, you won't. I said, yes, I will. And so we went back and forth. And finally I said, why don't you think I could be #1? Thinking that he was doubting my abilities. And that's something called the ego that kicks into our psyche at times. He said for 2 reasons. Number one, the territory has always been at the bottom. So it's really not a really good territory. And number two, you're not patient enough to understand that you need to learn what it takes to be successful before you can say you can be successful. Well, I dismissed what he said because I thought that because of my background and because I had this big ego, I could go in and break all these sales records and go out and be successful. So I worked extremely hard every day, every night, worked hard, learned the products, and went out. And by the end of that year, when the sales numbers came out, guess where I was ranked? 95 out of 98. Hadn't moved, at the bottom. But guess what? The ego kicked in and I said, you know what? That's okay. If I can't do it, nobody can. The key is to work harder, like I said before. My mindset was the key is to sell more. The key is to close harder. The key is to walk in with even more bravado in these offices. And so I worked harder, closed harder, did all the techniques even more. And I went throughout the entire year, and even though I knew that the numbers weren't really growing month after month, I just believed that because of this approach I had towards sales, it was going to make me a successful salesperson. At the end of that year, guess what happened? When the numbers came out, I had moved up 3 spots. I was now ranked 92 out of 98. Hadn't moved, at the bottom of the rankings. I was devastated. And it was the first time I felt like I had failed at something. Have you ever thought about, take a second and pause. Many of us, we have these goals and these ambitions or these things we want to accomplish. And maybe you wake up one day and you realize, I didn't do it. Everything I thought I knew about being successful isn't working. I tried this and I tried that and didn't work out. How does that make you feel? And I showed those emotions earlier about frustration and doubt and fear. All those crept in and I thought, man, what is wrong? Everything that I thought I knew about sales and that I tried wasn't working. To make matters worse, I got a new boss. And this was a little bit different than my previous boss. And this boss basically set me down shortly after the numbers came out and he said, Jamar, why do you think your numbers are bad? And I said, well, because the ego kicked in and I wanted to blame other people, which is what we as salespeople do. I said, well, the territory's in last place. It's always been in last place. It's a bad territory, so I'm ready to get transferred out. And he said, I don't think it's the territory at all. And I said, really? I said, what do you think it is? He goes, I think the problem is you. I said, what do you mean the problem is me? He goes, well, based on what I see here in terms of your effort, you're making a lot of sales calls, a lot of details per call, you're working hard, but you're not being successful. You're not bringing in the results. So that means two things. Number one, you're not effective at sales. You may not be cut out for pharmaceutical sales. And number two, I think you're burned out. When people try things over and over again and they don't work, it's called burnout. And I think you're burned out. And so we went back and forth because I didn't want to admit that was a problem. And finally he said, well, here's a written warning which states if you don't improve your sales results, you're going to get fired. And at the time I was 23 years old. And I'm thinking, how can I be burned out at 23? How can I be fired? And I had told everyone around me that I was going to be the successful salesperson. And here I am sitting at the bottom of the rankings about to get fired. And maybe some of you are going through something like that. Maybe not as serious, but maybe a certain aspect of that where you're being told that you're not good at what you thought you were good at. How does that make you feel? And so can you imagine that? And so what did I choose to do? Sometimes when we're struggling, instead of fighting it out, we choose to leave. We choose to run away. And so I tried to run away. I thought about opening a restaurant, and that didn't work out. I thought about doing my own public access television show, did that, didn't work out. I even interviewed with a competitor that had a similar product in the same territory, and guess what the manager told me during the interview? He said, Jamar, you haven't been successful where you're at. What makes you think you could be successful selling a similar product in the exact same territory? So I didn't get the job. Then I even applied for my MBA, thinking I could run away and go back to business school, and guess what? I didn't get in. So I was at the bottom with nowhere to go. And the thing is, we oftentimes present this front of everything's fine, everything's perfect on the outside, but on the inside, you're struggling. When you go home at night and you're by yourself in your apartment or you're talking to your spouse or significant other, that's when the truth comes out. And the truth was, I was struggling. I was in a professional depression trying to figure out how can I get out of it. And so this is when the situation started to change. I went to a party for a physician. And as I was leaving the party, because I was just done with it, I came across a doctor, and I just, happened to, by some reason, to tell him all that was going on and all the things I was struggling with out of the blue. I said, I'm struggling with all these things. And I was telling him how my boss didn't like me and how the company didn't appreciate me, how I was working hard but it wasn't working, how the customers didn't really understand my approach and all these things. And he said two things to me. He said, Jamar, number one, don't worry about losing your job, just do your job. Don't worry about losing your job, just do your job. And the second thing he said was, so what if you get fired? At least you'll get fired doing and being the best you can be at the time, because if not, that will set you up for how you approach your new position. So those two things kind of hit me, and I started to think about them a little bit, and I began to go out and worry less about how I was struggling and just focus on doing my job, and I really focused on trying to do my best every single day. But then I received a call that we all regret, and we all fear, and that's a call from the VP of Sales, which was my boss's boss. And he said, Jamar, I'd like to work with you. And I thought that meant the end of the road for me. I thought he was going to come out, take my car keys, and leave me at the airport to get a cab ride to get home. So I said, okay, thinking I was going to get fired. So I picked him up from the airport. And the first thing he said was, Jamar, your numbers pretty much suck. I said, yeah, you're right. And he said, whose responsibility is it? And I said, ego kicked in. I said, well, the territory's in last place. It's always been in last place. So I'm ready to get transferred to a different territory. He said, whose responsibility is it? And I said, well, the territory's in last place. It's always been in last place. And so we were going back and forth because I didn't want to admit what he was trying to get me to admit. He asked me at least 7 times, whose responsibility is it? And finally I said, it's my responsibility. And he said, now I can finally teach you something. You have finally realized the first step towards success. That is accepting ownership for the things you sign up for. You chose to work in this territory. You own every aspect of this territory. Take responsibility for everything that happens, good and or bad. And oddly enough, I felt a sense of relief when I accepted responsibility. And that's something that over the course of my career, that's probably one of the most difficult things for salespeople to do, and that is just take responsibility when things aren't going well. I'm not saying that we have control over everything. There's things outside of our control. But at the end of the day, we are the representatives for our businesses, for our companies and our products, and we need to take responsibility. So then he and I went to a doctor's office, and of course I'm there trying to get as much business as possible, and I brought in the big wig to help me do that. And this is a very interesting story because I really want you to think about this. We walk into the office and I'm there ready to sell my products. I have my detail aids, my information, I have my canned presentation, and I'm ready to close. I'm thinking I have the VP here, and he's just gonna, just close this stock. I'm gonna see how he closes hard and just sort of, puts him in the chokehold and gets his business. So we go in, and the VP starts asking the doctor questions like, tell me about your practice. What are your goals for the future? Are you married? Do you have children? What would you like to accomplish in the next 5 years? And all these questions, and I'm sitting there thinking, these questions are irrelevant. Who cares about all that kind of stuff? We are here to get business. We're here to close and to sell our products. And so I'm getting more and more steam. I'm getting, frankly, a little bit pissed off, right? And so the call ends with the VP, in my opinion, not selling one thing. And so we get into the car, and he could tell that I was upset. He says, Jamar, how do you think that call went? I said, I think it went terrible. I said, we spent the entire time asking about his family and his business and his children. I'm like, who cares? I'm about to get fired, and you're sitting up here having a powwow with the doctor. That doesn't make any sense. He says, let me tell you something. How can you expect anyone to ever do something for you? How can you expect anyone to ever respect you or appreciate you if you don't understand who they are, if you don't understand their story, if you don't understand what they're all about? If it's all about Jamar Brown, how can you expect anyone to make it to help you or to be there for you or to support you? And I reviewed that sales call, and I'm like, he's absolutely right. And I thought throughout my entire experience for the first couple of years in sales, it was all about Jamar Brown and what I could achieve and what I could do. And I never took the time to think about the customer's perspective. And there's many more stories in the book, but if that resonates with you in terms of your approach, I want you to really take the time and think about that and reflect on that. The last two stories I want to tell you, which is really the difference maker in terms of what happened. So I go into, about a week later, I go into another doctor's office who hadn't given me any business for 2 years. And I decided to do a preceptorship, which is a day where you spend time with the customer and you follow him or her around for the day. And this customer, we're taught to mirror the customer. That was the old approach. So I walk in, not dressed in my normal suit and tie, but dressed in khakis and a golf polo shirt, which is how the doctors dress. So I walked in there, through the crowded waiting room of about 25 people to the area where the staff was, about 10 staff members, a really large, practice. And I see the doctor, and I say, I'm ready for my preceptorship. And he says, what are you doing dressed like that? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you're not dressed professionally. And of course the ego kicks in and everyone's looking at you and you're feeling like you got to defend yourself. And so I say, how can you say that I'm not dressed professionally if I'm dressed just like you? And he said, Jamar, I'm not going to entertain that. He said, you can go home and change into a suit and tie and come back like a professional, or you can never come back again and just go about your business. And he turned and walked away, leaving me there in front of the entire staff and all the patients that had overheard this conversation. So I'm upset, and I'm like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm ready to quit. So I go home and I type out my resignation letter. And before I email it, I call the one person I thought I could talk to, my mother, of all people. And I say, Mom, this is what's been going on, because she didn't know what was happening for the past 2 years, because when you're struggling, sometimes you keep things inside. You don't share them with everybody. And I said, I've been struggling. My boss doesn't like me. The company is this, and I'm working hard. I'm not being successful. And to top it all off, I went into a doctor's office today, and he sent me home, totally embarrassed me. And she said, well, it is his business. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, when people come to our house, they have certain things. They may take off their shoes, or, they may sit certain areas, and that's how we operate. So you're basically going into his house, and you should abide by his rules. And I said, so you're taking his side? And I said, I can't accept that. She said, well, so let me tell you something. And she said, don't let your ego get in the way of your sales success. And then I hung up the phone because I was upset. But something about those words resonated big time. Don't let your ego get in the way of your success. And I realized how this big ego that I had was getting in the way of my success. And so I ended up changing clothes. I went back to the doctor's office, and I told myself, no matter what he says, if he says you need to wear a black tie on Tuesdays or a red and green shoe on Wednesdays, whatever he said, this is his business. I'm there to learn from him. I'm there to understand how to be successful in his practice. Let me do whatever he says. And so when I walked back and he saw me, he said, Jamar, the fact that you changed clothes, or you went home and changed, shows me more about your character than anything else that you can share with me. He said, I will give you a chance. If your products do what you say they do, then I'll give your products a fair chance in my office. And it ended up becoming, one of my most successful accounts. And then the very last thing, a week later, I went back to the same doctor's office. And this is where I really want you to think about your story in a word called why. And I go in, and there's a patient that is there, African-American lady who's back in the room with the doctor. And I could tell that she's crying, but I'm not quite understanding what's going on. And so the patient, walks out straight up to me. Sometimes when somebody walks up to you, you don't want to talk to them. You kind of turn because you don't want to talk to them. So I was doing that. And I felt a pull on my jacket. And the patient said, I understand that you are a pharmaceutical sales rep. I said, yes. She goes, I have glaucoma, and I was selling medications for glaucoma at the time. I said, oh, great. Turns out she was using one of my products. And I'm thinking, my products are the absolute best. And I said, great. And I'm thinking, money in my pocket because she's using my product. I said, well, how's it working for you? And she said, well, not too good because today I found out that I'm blind in one eye and 50% blind in the other eye. And my heart sank. And I'm like, how is this possible? Our products are the best. And she said, it's not because of your product. Your product works fine. The bottom line is I haven't been using it. I haven't been coming to see the doctor regularly. I have these other conditions, and glaucoma is a disease that I don't feel any pain, and so I just forget about it and don't take my medications, and I've missed appointments, and I really haven't thought about it. And today I suffered the consequences of that. And at that moment, I realized what I was really doing as a salesperson, what my purpose was. I said, that was the first time I thought about the people that are actually using the products that I'm selling. And think about that for a second. Whatever product that you're selling, I don't care if you're in real estate or insurance, or if you're selling the phone book, I don't care what it is. Think about the purpose behind your products. Why are the people really using them? And at that moment, I realized that I wasn't just selling a product, I was selling something that could help give someone a better quality of life. I can help this little old lady see her grandchildren a few years longer just by taking this medication, just by helping her to be better educated about her disease. And that became my purpose. And so I stopped looking at the sales numbers and the rankings and the results. And for that entire year, this was in December of 1997, for the entire year, I didn't look at the sales numbers or the rankings. I went out and my purpose was to help little old ladies like that. I knew that if I helped my doctors' practices grow and I helped them to see more patients, if I could introduce them to programs that could help indigent patients that couldn't afford medications, if I could help them to provide better educational materials for their patients, if I could help them to understand my products better, then they could help more little old ladies. And that became my purpose. And let's fast forward a year later, there I was on stage in Hawaii accepting the most prestigious award that a salesperson can achieve, that Salesperson of the Year. And during that acceptance speech, I didn't talk once about technique of sales and introduction and identifying needs and closing, all these things. I talked about the purpose behind what we do. The purpose behind what we do. And so I want you to really think about that story and think about how it can apply to your sales approach and your sales process as I talk about some things that changed. So what did change before we bring out our special guests? Number one, I took responsibility, and I understood that taking responsibility is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And so if you're someone that, as a salesperson that is not taking full responsibility for your results, really think about how that affected my career. When I did take responsibility, things changed. People buy the experience and not the product. And there's a funny thing on Instagram I saw the other day, which is some people are like clouds. When they leave, everyone's happy. The bottom line is, I didn't care how good my products were. People didn't like dealing with me because you know what? I didn't treat them the right way. I didn't respect them the way I should have respected them. And they treated me as such. So what is the experience people are having with you? Not your products, with you as a sales professional. What are they saying about you? Sell to purpose and not product. Don't just think about what your products are and the technical aspects of them. Think about what they do for the end user, how you can communicate the benefits of your product based on the purpose behind your products. And in my case, ever since I met that little old lady, there hasn't been a day that has gone by that I haven't thought about her. And everything I do is based on how can I help that little old lady? And now with my own consulting business, how can I help other sales professionals understand and get it. Get what I understood about the sales process that completely changed my career back in 1998. Also, make your customers a star. I was walking in like I was a star with my big ego, my flashy suits and everything. I was a star. I was an actor on stage. It wasn't about me. It was about the customer. Make every customer feel like they are the most important customer in your business. I want every customer to feel like when they work with me, they were flying first class. I didn't care if they were a smaller business or larger business. They all got the same attention. The second thing is, think about what you want to be or become, not what you want to do. I thought about getting promoted and making money. Well, really, what was my legacy as a result of that? And then how did that change when I wanted my legacy to be, Jamar was someone that really cared about my business, cared about my patients, and everything he did or said was with the purpose of helping me to treat my patients as best as possible. That's the legacy that I wanted to leave. And if you ask my customers today, I think they'll say that's what changed about Jamar's legacy from early on in his sales career to many, many years since that time. And also gratitude all the time. It's so easy to not be appreciative and to not show gratitude, especially when we're struggling, especially when we're dealing with the pressures of making the sales number or meeting our quotas. But show gratitude, that fact that for anything in life, that you woke up that morning, that you're working with a company that provides you with the means to take care of your family. Even if something, for example, when my boss told me I was burned out, I wasn't cut out for sales. You know what? I was upset at the time, but he was absolutely right. And I sent him a long email afterwards when I finally realized that he wasn't the problem, Jamar was a problem. And I said, thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for telling me what I needed to hear. As difficult as it was, I really appreciate you telling me that and taking the time to push me in a way that got me to think about my career differently. Because if he hadn't done that, I might not have ever taken responsibility for my results, and I might have had a completely different career than going on to win numerous sales awards, being a VP of sales at 34 years old. So show gratitude all the time. So with that said, what I like to do is bring on a very special guest. And this is someone that has read my book, What's Your Sales Story? One of the many people that have read it, that has left me emails and called me, but really shared some really interesting things about his what he understood about the book and how he applied those lessons. And I'd like to welcome him to the program. But before that, I want to show you a very quick video about his company, the Alltech Media Group.
The Alltech Media Group, a Southern California multimedia company providing exponential branding and marketing services to all their clients. The Alltech Media Group understands the value of the 3W strategy, providing their clients proven, trackable results. Let us make it easy for you to grow your business. Visit alltechmedia.com.
Welcome back. We are here with Dwight Cromie, who is the founder of the Alltech Media Group, which is a multimedia and video production company that has been in business since 1980, so a number of years operating a very successful business. He also produces several online video business magazines that are distributed to hundreds of thousands of people, both nationally and internationally. And he also just started a company called StudioCast Pros, which allows people like me to have high definition, in-studio, online programming, which is a really good offering for people like myself. So with that said, I want to welcome Dwight to the show. Dwight, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And Dwight, I wanted to share a little bit of a story about how we met. We met about a year or so ago at a networking function. And what was interesting is at the time we shared some similar interests. And we had a few meetings, and I ended up giving you a copy of my book, What's Your Sales Story? And I noticed that it sat on the shelf for several months. And you ended up calling me one night a couple weeks ago. But before we dive into that, I wanted to, as a business person that's been in business for, since 1980, which is a long time, you've seen a lot of ups and downs. How has the business environment changed in recent years, in your opinion?
Well, I think I'd like to use myself as kind of a model. I think, over the years, we've obviously seen ups and downs. This has probably been the longest down that most of us seen in our lifetimes. But it changed the way a lot of us did business. And that's kind of where your book comes in. In the 90s, in the early 2000s, the way I did business was, how can I help my client? How can I help my client succeed? And that was really my goal. And I think that was a goal with a lot of companies, even large corporations. How do I treat my employees? How do I serve my clients so it benefits my clients? With the downturn in the economy, we all lost income, our lifestyles changed, and it changed from how do I help my client to what can I sell my client? Where can I provide services where I'll make income from my client? So, you know, I can't speak for other people, but I lost the focus of where I needed to how to serve my clients. Not that I wasn't providing them quality service and good products, but the way I approached my client was completely different.
Well, I think you speak to really a lot of business owners out there that have dealt with similar things over the past, several years. And I want to ask you, because oftentimes it's difficult to especially when you've been in business since 1980, to realize I need to do something different, or to look yourself in the mirror and say, what used to work may not be working, or let me get back to what I used to do. So, I know that What's Your Sales Story sat on your shelf for for several months. And so just talk to me, what prompted you to actually pick it up and read it? And then tell me about the phone call you made to me on that Sunday night, like 2 weeks ago.
The reason I finally picked up your book was I actually took some time off for myself. Like most small business owners, I stopped working on my business, and unfortunately I was working in my business. So by working in my business, I had no time. So I really had no time to read your book. And it finally came down to where I took a short weekend off with a friend of mine. We went up to the mountains camping, and I thought, well, I saw your book, and I said, well, I'll take that with me because I like to read when I'm up in the mountains. So I read your book, and I liked your story. I mean, not that I could identify it because I'm not in that industry, but the final message that you delivered in your book really impacted the way I used to do business. Like I said, I used to be concerned with my client and his clients and how did everybody win, where because of the slowdown in the economy, that focus changed to how do I provide food for my family, how do I keep my employees employed.
Right. How do you survive? Right.
Exactly,
Right.
And that was really the lost focus, and what your book did for me, it helped me refocus what was important.
Dwight, I appreciate your sentiments about the book. Let me ask you this. I like to focus on reality and application of what's in What's Your Sales Story. So from your perspective, what have you taken from the book that you've now applied that you have done differently? And give us some examples of that, and then how your clients have responded differently to you as a result of your different approach with them.
Well, your book was relatively good timing. I had currently or had presently made presentations to about 2 or 3 clients, and the clients came back and said that my quality was better than what they were currently receiving, and my price was better than what they were currently receiving. But, and I couldn't get beyond the but. Well, if my price was better and my quality was better, why aren't you switching to using us? And I think it was my approach. I wasn't concerned about what I could do for the client as much as what I could provide for the client. And so I stepped back, I talked to my staff, and we changed the way we do go about business. So as an example, we've gone back to a couple of our older clients, and I reconnected with them. I went in and said, hey, I'm not here to sell you anything today. I just want to talk to you. I want to know more about you and what your personal goals are. I want to know more about where your company is and where you want the direction of your company to go. And what are the things that keep you up at night? What do you struggle with?
Right.
And hopefully I can be a solution or a part of that solution. If not, hopefully I can help you find that solution. So it wasn't so much selling my services, but how do I help this client? And hopefully by helping this client, it will eventually help me. I actually applied that same philosophy to a brand new client where we had, he was brought in by another client, and I asked if I could spend some 30 minutes with him after the meeting. And he said, sure, I'll give you 30 minutes. And in that 30 minutes, I asked him about himself. I asked him about his family. I asked him about when did he start his business, what were the good times and the bad times, what had worked and what hadn't worked. Where did he want to move his company? And I wasn't selling, I wasn't presenting him any products. I was just trying to get a better understanding of who he was, where he was, and where he wanted to go. And after that meeting, he basically gave me a double-handed handshake and said, I've been talking to ad agencies from California to New York. And he said, you're the first person that actually talked to me.
Wow.
And he said, please put together a proposal as soon as possible. So I wasn't looking for a sale. I was really trying to gather information about him to see if there was anything I could do for him, which I believe there is, but it was just that personal connection. So I think your book has helped me refocus what I used to do, was connect with my clients. And actually, that's when I was having the most fun in my business, because I was enjoying what I was doing. I was providing great services to my client, and my clients were succeeding. And somehow, not that I got off track, but I just missed the approach.
You know, Dwight, I wish we had a lot of time to spend together, because I'd love to pick your brain and more about the book. But there are a couple of things that you touched on before I asked you the last question that really hit home for me. Number one, I talk about responsibility. And it's so difficult for salespeople to, when things aren't going well, to say, you know, it's me. I'm the problem. And for you, as someone that's been in business for so many years, who has been successful, I know your business has been tremendously successful, to go through some downtimes and then to say, you know what, I need to do something different. That says so much about you as a person and about what we as salespeople need to do. I think also your approach with customers, trying to understand them and their stories. And the final thing you said, just in the interest of time, was fun. I will tell you that when you're not successful, when you're struggling and your customers don't like dealing with you, it is not. It's
not
fun.
Not
and
at all.
selling can be fun when you help customers get what they want and you understand who they are. When you walk into an office and they welcome you in versus running the other way,
Right.
That's fun. And that fun does turn into sales, because selling is emotional. And when you express emotions of trying to help people and fun and being real, they're going to respond positively. So the last question I want to ask you is, you know, so why would you recommend What's Your Sales Story to other business owners and other salespeople?
Well, I mean, again, part of your book, you talk about egos, and you were just talking about, you know, I was blaming everything else. I was blaming the economy. I was blaming my staff. I was blaming the government. And not that those things didn't have contributing factors to it,
Right.
but it was really my approach. It was my fault. It was my ego standing in front. And your book, which was really nice for me, it was an easy read. It went to the core of, you know, where you were as a young man and thinking that you could take on the world. But I identified with it with my own personal sales background, my own personal business experience over the last 35 years. And it just brought home where I needed to focus. And truly, since reading your book, and I have applied the thoughts behind your book to my clients, and I am truly seeing tremendous success. I have clients that have canceled on me just recently in the last year that I said, hey, can I just have lunch with you? After having lunch with them, they said, perfect timing, let's do this. So I'm not saying I'm batting 100, but or 1,000, I'm probably batting 800 right now.
That's
so
great.
I think for anybody that's a business owner, a salesperson, considering business, it's a good book to read, because it's easy to read, but it's a very strong message. It's what is your personal story? Where are you personally going? And it really helped refocus me and actually helped me refocus my company.
Excellent. Dwight, I want to thank you for your time. I want to
You're
thank
welcome.
you for being such a genuine person. It's not easy to come on a program and
Appreciate it.
express, you know, who you are and what you've dealt with. And I know that you're on the right path. When you bat 800, if you were actually people that play baseball don't even bat that. If you're batting that, you're probably in the Hall of Fame after the first season. So I wish you continued success. I know your customers appreciate your approach, and I thank you for sharing your thoughts about What's Your Sales Story today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I want to thank our guest, Dwight Cromie, for being on the show. As I mentioned early on, I believe in reality. We could talk about theories all day, but at the end of the day, if we can't show the proof behind the theory and the results, then really these are just theories. And I want to let all of you know, as people that tune into my programs, that hire me for one-on-one coaching, that hire me to do a motivational talk with their sales team, or to even run a training program, that I'm not just going to talk about theories. I'm going to talk about reality and results. And I think what you just heard from Dwight is how he applied the theories in What's Your Sales Story to his own business and his own approach, and they've completely changed the course of his business. So I want to thank you, Dwight, for being here again, and also thank all of you for watching. Don't forget, we have a couple of upcoming programs. Number one is the Selling in Color program, and that is how to unlock the code of your customers, looking at personality types, and you definitely don't want to miss that program, because it's really going to help you understand how do you better connect with your customers by understanding their personality types as well as your own. Then we also have the Kaizen Way of Sales Excellence, which is a tremendous program that's going to talk about how do we create an impact when we get that 3 feet of space in front of our customers. How do we actually achieve more by doing less? And I'm sure we are all interested in learning how to do that, especially with all the pressures we're under to produce results with limited resources and with limited time. And also we're going to talk about the Kaizen Way of Sales Excellence actual sales process, which is completely different than anything that you've ever experienced before, but I guarantee will help to catapult your trajectory towards being the most successful salesperson you can be. So this is how you can sign up for the program. Tune in or log in to studiocastpros.com and click on upcoming events. And then you can call me directly at 949-371-9077. And you'll receive hours of personalized sales training and coaching, a free copy of my book, What's Your Sales Story, as well as a free 20-minute strategy session. And finally, before we wrap up, please share your thoughts and ideas. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to work with you. You can Twitter me at Jamar_Brown, Facebook, info@thekaizenway.com. That's via email, LinkedIn, and 949-371-9077 to have a direct live conversation with me. So with that said, I want to thank you for tuning in to this program, What's Your Sales Story? And I really hope that it helped you to eliminate what is getting in the way of your sales success, to understand the significance of stories, of your customer stories, as well as your own, and hopefully create a situation where you're able to write your own story that says, today, these were my results. This is how I felt about sales. But towards the end of your story, you can say, I reached my potential as a salesperson. I sold to purpose and not just product. And I had a tremendous sales career. So with that said, once again, I'm Jamar Brown. Thank you very much.